It's instructional design, mainly through Canvas, and we're lucky enough today to have two outstanding lead learners, very experienced lead learners helping us out today. A lot of you probably know Chris Long. He is our educational technology coordinator, a former teacher here at Marina High School. He's been using Canvas to deliver instruction since 2011. So a lot of experience there. And then we've got Nick Schwab from Huntington Beach High School, who's taught, I believe, social science and now teaches more on the CTE end with AP 2D art, hybrid online photo, digital media, is the webmaster at Huntington Beach High School, a former TRT, and one of the first hybrid online teachers in the district. So both of those gentlemen, very experienced in what we're talking about here, and they're going to take us on a journey about designing instruction, effective instruction using Canvas. So just a couple of pieces of housekeeping before we go. Make sure to continue to keep your mics muted unless you have something that you're getting involved in the conversation on. And please use the chat feature. We'll be looking at those, and any questions that you have, if you throw in the chat, we'll monitor that and make sure to get to those questions throughout the presentation. So without further ado, gentlemen, it's all yours.
Thanks, Tim. So cool to see everybody. Looks like we have 108 people here. I'm really excited about this. Just to give you a link to the slides that we're going to share. These will be in our PD course as well after the recording. Also, I did want to mention that we are recording this, so I'm just making you aware of that. You could use your mute button or to mute your camera and your video if you don't want to be part of the recording. It won't record you unless you're like actually talking or sharing your screen. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now, and hopefully that will work without a hitch. Does everybody see that all right? Yeah, thanks for the thumbs up. Okay, so as Tim mentioned, we're gonna spend a little time kind of going over what we think like the core areas of online learning design really is, and specifically using Canvas. But just to kind of start out, I'm going to start out with a definition of what is instructional design. And you can see this is, I thought it was a pretty good definition. It's very wordy, has a lot of words in it. The practice of systematically designing, developing, and delivering instructional products and experiences, both digital and physical, in a consistent and reliable fashion toward an efficient, effective, appealing, engaging, and inspiring acquisition of knowledge. That's a lot to digest, but we're going to really focus in on like the digital, since Canvas is our digital classroom. And really today is going to be focused on the efficient, effective, appealing, engaging, and inspirational aspects of that learning environment. And kind of getting a little bit nerdy back into the days when I was teaching physics at Marina. One of the things that I just love talking about and having my students learn about was what they call modern physics, even though Einstein and others came up with this in the early 1900s. But we used to think of space as being three-dimensional, and then time wasn't really part of that. And then a new mathematical model was needed that basically said space and time are kind of like a fabric. And the theory of relativity says basically as you move through space, it alters how you move through time. And so they're interconnected. And when we look at our online learning space in Canvas, I think the online learning space definitely affects how our students and even ourselves structure their time as well. So these two things are interconnected kind of as the fabric of what we have to design with in Canvas.
Hey, Chris, we have a request to put that into presentation mode so it's a little bit larger. Is there a way to do that?
There is a way to do that. I would encourage I put the link in the chat so you can have a full tab open if you want, and I can present. How does that look? Is that better?
That looks a little bit better.
Okay. And then Nick's going to do the same thing. So he's going to share his screen now and kind of go up with what's next.
All right, let's see how this switch works today. Okay. All right, did that go?
It's coming right now.
All right, hold on.
And then just hit present.
Yeah, but you can see my Google slideshow. Yeah. Okay.
100%, yeah.
If anybody doesn't mind me not going to present, just I'm going to switch in tabs a little bit here, and mine doesn't probably have as much detail as Chris.
One other thing you could do is you could pin Nick's screen you can just click on it and then click pin and then unpin it when he's done if you want it larger.
Okay. All right. So I'm starting with this quote. I just finished Steve Jobs' biography a couple days ago, so we've got quite a few Apple references in here, so I apologize for that starting off. But one of his big quotes that he kept in mind was a DaVinci quote. Obviously, simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today, is trying to simplify how you use Canvas, and then as a result, how the students are using it to make it easier, and so that they're really focusing on your course content rather than having to learn how to use Canvas, or you necessarily having to learn every feature in Canvas. And kind of to add a couple things to what Chris had said about instructional design, I think one thing that's important to note is that what we're going to share today, I really believe is incredible design, whether we're teaching online next year or we're back to our normal face-to-face. I think these tips are just good to use in either setting. So it's not just for a online platform. And then the definition Chris gave you of instructional design, I've been really into something called human-centered design or user experience, user interface, that kind of stuff. And you'll see a video at the very end. We probably won't watch it together, but you can watch it on your own. That's all about that. And so it's kind of really the idea that we're keeping kind of what you do normally in class when you're developing a lesson plan or things like that, but really keeping the user, or the student in this case, in mind when you're developing stuff. So if you've seen me do a presentation before, you've more than likely seen this slide. I finally updated the Yahoo slide. I wanted to see if Yahoo was even still in business, I guess. But you notice, right, nobody ever says go Yahoo that to look it up, and just see the difference of this user interface, which one's simpler, which one's using it, which one's one of the most successful companies in the world, where the other one's been filing bankruptcy and things like that. So just look at how simple, I mean, really that Google page is something most of us could probably design. And maybe that's what we need to keep in mind. The idea of less is more a lot of times. If you see in the notes down here, I've got something that it's from a book I read a few years ago called The Design of Everyday Things by Don Norman. He's worked with Apple and a lot of different companies about human-centered design. But the paradox of tech, that technology is supposed to simplify our lives, but sometimes there's so much of it and so many things. You might hear me say the term featureitis later, that there's almost too many features where it becomes unusable and harder than it would have been if we just wouldn't use technology at all. So that's one thing to kind of keep in mind. And that's where we'll start, is our course navigation menu. And you might have seen it. I just had, when I got into my classroom this morning, a change of heart of what I would use for my graphics here, because I saw these remotes sitting on my desk, of kind of that difference there of there's a lot of training and a manual and all that would need to go into figuring out how to use that remote on the left, which I'm guessing most of you have in your house if you have, Spectrum or DirecTV, versus the Apple TV remote that if you have young kids like I do, they pick this thing up and can use it no problem. My 7-year-old son is now talking to Siri, and I didn't teach him any of this stuff. He can easily navigate all this stuff without training. And so that's what we're really focusing on with instructional design. We're trying to stick with one of the big design principles we're talking about today is discoverability. So how do kids easily access and find what you want them to look at and be able to do. And that's our goal. So we're going to be giving you a few examples. So this one, as you see, there's a how-to guide right here. I'm going to show you real quickly. If I switch into Canvas, and just everybody can see my Canvas page now, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So, so you see over here on the left, these are all of the default menu items that come with Canvas when you start a new course. If you see these little crossed out eyeballs, that means these are ones I'm actually not using. So if I were to come here, I'll just show you real quickly a student view of mine. These are the only menu items that my students see when they come to my course. All right, so a couple things to keep in mind. That's not the only items I use, but these are the only way, what is that, 5 different links they can use to navigate my course to find the information, okay? And you'll see in a moment when I get into modules, how I still use all those other ones. It's just not my menu setup. So I'm using another design principle called constraints. I'm trying to constrain the options that they have to find the information to make it easier for them to get where I want them to get. And so to do that, it's actually fairly simple. You just go into settings. Now you need to do this for each different course or subject that you teach in Canvas. But you just go into settings and navigation, and it's as simple as dragging and dropping. So if I wanted assignments in there, I'd put it up at the top, and you can obviously reorder them however you'd like. So basically what I did when I set this up is I just pulled all of these ones that I didn't want the kids to be able to click on directly down into here. And then the big thing, you got to make sure on my screen right now, I'm actually seeing the save. When I'm on a laptop, I don't. And sometimes I forget to hit save because it's below the screen, which is another thing to kind of keep in mind as you're designing your Canvas page. And Chris will talk about that a little bit later. But once you hit save, all these ones are hidden. You can always pull them back in if you need to. But that's just a way to kind of simplify your navigation, your menu structure for the students to use. And it's not that everybody has to have the exact same one, but if there's stuff that you're never using or you don't want kids clicking on, just simply remove it. And then I forget if we're going to talk about this now, but just something to remember, once you set up this menu, each semester when you're starting a new Canvas course, you can import these settings. So you don't have to do this every semester. I've set up my menu, and each semester when I start a new Canvas course, I just import these settings, and my menu that I had the previous semester is right there. So I'm really only ever doing this one time per course.
Yeah, the best thing about using Canvas this year is Canvas next year, because it gets easier with that import. You can import all the customizations, assignments, pages, things that you make from one year to the next or one semester to the next. Nick, if you could go back to that menu real quick.
This one?
In your, yeah. I noticed you don't have assignments there.
Yeah.
Can you talk about what your rationale is there?
Yeah, I was gonna do that when we get to the modules part. Is that all right?
Okay, that's good.
Because then you'll be able to see it, how I'm still using assignments. Oops. So I'm not going to hit save on this, but how I'm using assignments, I just don't have an option for kids to click directly to get to the assignments page. And so it'll make them think a little bit more sense when I get to my little part on how I use modules. And remind me then if I don't say it then.
Will do. So taking it from there, you've got your navigation, your course navigation dialed in. And then we're going to be looking at our home page. I'm still seeing Nick's screen. All right. Let's see if it's, are you guys seeing the home page image that I have up? No.
I'll hit stop presenting real quick.
Okay. How about now if I talk? Oh, okay. I got it. How's that? Thumbs up? Thanks. So I used to think of like a home page. I used to actually, I think I have it written in our hybrid online teacher PD that we do as the homepage kind of being the welcome mat to your course. And as I started preparing for this, I kind of changed my metaphor. I think more of the homepage as the entryway to your course. And you can see a picture right here is a door. There's some decoration around the door. There is a doormat. There's an address. The door is open. Hopefully that looks inviting. The lights are on. It looks like maybe somebody's home. There's something inside worth going into. And that again goes to, those design principles, those adjectives, those 5 adjectives. If we can make it efficient, effective, appealing, engaging, and inspiring, but overall, don't get carried away. We still want it to be simple so that we can maximize that discoverability, and we don't have to teach students how to do it. So if we add too much decoration, then it's going to be cluttered. You wouldn't be able to get into the house. You would trip over things. You might create a hazard. So I'm going to show you a couple of sample home pages here. And I'm just going to go over to Canvas over here. And by the way, if you're not in our distance learning PD, all you have to do to get to it is you can click on the help menu. And then right here, the top thing, unlock the potential of Canvas. Just click on that link and it'll take you right to the course. So you can see that this is an example of a home page. It might not be one that you would want to use in your class, but I'll talk about, I think the inspiration aspect and the appealing and engaging comes from having a graphic. Because pictures, we live in a graphic dominated society. So pictures do more than words, but a few words do a lot as well. So you notice that paint your canvas for distance learning is the only words that's kind of in that graphic. It's hopefully not too cluttered. And then these are fancy tiles that I have shared an example of this in Canvas Commons, which is linked to on the help slide. But you can hover over them and you can see a little bit more, read a little bit more about what each resource is about. Not too many teachers would use this page, but if you're doing if you're using Canvas for this kind of purpose where it's all asynchronous, it's not like a live course that people are going through, it's more like a web page. This is a great design for that. And we can help you set one of these up in your courses pretty easily if you want, but changing it requires kind of some advanced skills. So I've made a module in this course. So if you click on module in this course, there's just a few sample pages at the bottom. So this is basically what I think the minimalistic kind of Google-like simplicity driven homepage should look like. And I just made this this image. I am like, what course should I use as an example? I like science, so I'm using biology as an example on these. So I got this photo on unsplash.com. If you just Google Unsplash, they're all free photos. You don't have to credit. They're 100% copyright free, and they're beautiful photos on there. So you can use that if you don't have any experience using image editors, you can use a program that's online called Canva. It's pretty easy. You got Canvas and Canva. And Canva has some beautiful templates that you can use to make this. And it doesn't take too long to make one of these. So I've got a header. Hopefully that's kind of inspiring. It tells you a little bit about what the subject is. And Nick and I were talking, and he was like, he likes to have dynamics. So the header doesn't stay the same all the time. Maybe it changes every unit that you do or every topic of study. You have some maybe text, and then you have, and this is called a header. So if I click edit on this, and we click on that text right here, you can see that this was like paragraph text right here. And I'm just going to change that to header 2. And that's all the styling you need to do. You don't need to highlight things. You don't need to, go to a web page like Google or anything. Do they have the highlighter on all the different things that they think is important for you to go to? No, it's just 100% simple. So just use that. That's also a really good accessibility feature, because if our students are hard of sight or blind, they have screen readers, and when it's tagged as a header, that will let the student know that this is like a bold topic in a chapter. So maybe there's a quote or something that you want your students to be thinking of for this unit. So I put an example there. And then maybe just a couple links. I wouldn't make more than 5. You know, your goal to probably be between 3 and 5 links here. So you could have a link to a help board, which is just a discussion topic that I set up that people can go to for help. And then everybody in the course is in it. So in this course, a lot of times somebody answers somebody else's question before I even see it. And we can use our students in that way too. You can link to your course expectations, your contact info. And I think it'd be really nice. I think if we were all online, this would definitely be a necessity, is like, how do you learn more about your teacher? You know, and that could just be a link to another page that kind of has your bio, your resume, or what you want your students to know about you. So that, I think, is, you know, a very good example of like hitting all those 5 elements of instructional design. If you want to go for a different look, I know a lot of teachers like this. They have basically just embedded a Google slide presentation at the top. And then you could have those other elements at the bottom here. And the nice thing about the Google slide is, like, you can just, students can just easily click through it. There's no, you know, very little lag, and they can kind of see. So this is like a daily agenda. There's one for Marina here. I think it was Misha at Huntington Beach High School did something like this for Huntington and shared it with all the teachers, where, like, is today a Chromebook day? Yes or no? So you can highlight that, some reminders, some agenda items, that kind of thing. And then our ELA facilitator, David Terrio, used this in one of his modules, where it's more of like kind of a mystery a little bit, where, okay, so you have to kind of dig around a little bit. In one of these things, it says there's a hidden link somewhere that the students are challenged with to find. And it's as simple as, you know, change, if you want this to be the first one, you just put the most recent one on top. Here's your Google slide deck. I want that to be the first one. You just drag it to the top, come back over here. I could reload the page, and then boom, that's the first slide. So updating this page from there on out is just changing a Google slide. So that's another example of something that you can do for a home page. Here's the fancy tile page and what it might look a little bit at the top for biology. You could change all those images to be corresponding to what your topics of study are. And then here's one. I helped Kim Moore, who teaches at Westminster. She teaches ERWC hybrid. Here's one that she uses. So that kind of hopefully gives you an example of, or a few ideas of what you can do for your home page. And again, if you want to set anything like this up, but you're not exactly sure how to get started, we can help you do that. Just reach out or stick around or sign up for an appointment on Wednesday or Thursday.
All right. And one thing just to add to that, I know Chris and I were talking about this yesterday with the Google Slides embedded. It's definitely a fairly simple thing to set up on your end as a teacher. And we'll get to a little bit more, I think, one of the last slides when we talk about using the calendar and things like that. I'd say just be careful of how much of your agenda or date-based information you're putting into that Google slide. Over the last few years, as I've done that design feedback with students as one of their assignments, to tell them to give me feedback on what they like about Canvas. Probably the top one kids don't like is the Google Slides embedded homepage, where they're having to go specifically to that course sorry, I'm trying to do 2 things at once, to get information just for that one and then click through all those slides rather than being able to see it on the calendar. So that is consistently probably one of the most common negative, I guess, critiques of how teachers are using it, is if they're using their agenda in that Google slideshow. So if they were gone 3 or 4 days ago, they've got to, instead of being able to just go to the Canvas calendar, they've got to go all the way into that course and click through all those slides to find maybe when something was due or what they did, rather than be able to see it on the calendar. But we'll kind of talk about that a little bit later. If I could just, with the slide or the homepage, I'll show you what I did. Can you guys all see this?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is kind of what I do for mine. I'm not going to do it next year. I don't love it. I love the idea of it. But you see, this is a embedded Flickr slideshow. I wish it was autoplay and didn't require people to click on it, because a lot of times they don't. I also wish it wasn't Adobe Flash, because you have to click to load it every time, so it's a little annoying. But we've got a Twitter feed, so I've really tried to do something more where it's really that dynamic homepage, so that hopefully every time they come, they're seeing new content that maybe is inspiring or engaging, and then they can navigate to the work. But I found if it's just all of the work, yeah, it's easy to find, but they're probably not going to want to come as often. Maybe there's something new or exciting to see. Kind of like when they're going to Instagram or Snapchat, there's something new in that feed that's pulling them back in. So trying to use that design idea. But anyways, I'll get back into modules. I found this other day online. A teacher did a survey with students at their school, and I believe they were pretty new to Canvas. This is the student responses. You can see almost 60% of students prefer when their teachers use modules. Almost 40% didn't really care as long as it was consistent, and I think that's really important to note. I know there's been a lot of discussions at our site and maybe throughout the district of Canvas norms. Maybe it's just semantics. I get a little bit nervous of that like the idea that every teacher has to use Canvas the exact same way, because I think there's multiple ways to use it effectively. But I think as long as you're keeping your students in mind and they understand how to navigate your course, that's what's important, even if it's different than their English teacher or their math teacher. And you see, I don't know, maybe some people do their entire course just using pages, but you saw that that was not a very big one for them. All right, so I'm going to show you my Canvas course. I do everything in modules. I don't know if there's anything that's not in a module, but keeping the idea that it's just an organizational tool. So if you already have all these assignments and quizzes and things like that built, you do not have to redo them. It's just a way to organize it. So if you have, a unit on the World War II, and you're a history teacher, this is just a way to organize it. You probably have that folder in either Google Drive or on your desktop with all that information organized that way. This is a very similar setup. It's just an organizational tool, and it's probably one of the best pieces of feedback I get from students in my classes, that they tend to not that they necessarily love the assignments, but they love how easy it is and consistent at going through these modules. So you can see I have all my modules for a semester in there, and so I'll just kind of walk you through this. If you can see under each title, there's a word, so view, submit, 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 submit. So basically I've set rules on each one. So it is requiring a student to actually look at, and I'll go through these, this overview. And I'll set up, if you can see on the right, these green check marks. Again, you wouldn't believe how, like if I set something up wrong or I add something new to a module in here and I forget to put the requirement there and the kids do it and they don't get their green check mark, they always let me know instantly, because it's just a really great, easy signifier to kind of show that they did that step. So when you have this rule, as soon as the kid submits for this, they're going to get a green check mark over there and they can know they move on. And real quick, what Chris had mentioned earlier, even though I've limited my main menu item, if you see in this module, this is a page, this is a page, this is a discussion, and then these three are assignments. And in different modules, I might even have a quick quiz for check for understanding. So I'm using a lot of the tools and different elements that are in Canvas, but I'm just not putting a menu item directly to it. I'm having them come through modules, and I learned it the hard way a couple years ago that I had everything set up in modules, but I still had the assignments tab open. So kids weren't coming to modules, they were just skipping directly to the assignment and not seeing maybe the tips or the tutorial pages or the foundation information that I wanted them to have before they got to the assignments. So I realized, why don't I use the element of constraints and not allow them to go there? And so that's what I've kind of done. So I start every module with a quick module overview. I try to reduce the amount of words every year by like 10% because I just don't think they're reading it for the most part. And so it just kind of gives a quick overview of what we're going to do, what we just finished, and more specifically why it's kind of important here. So I keep that consistent every single, so I just copy and paste this for each module and then just customize the words and the picture in each one. And then it has a quick little list of all the stuff we're going to do in that module. What I'm doing now, and I don't know if we're going to talk about later, since we've moved to fully online since March, I've been embedding a quick video of myself kind of talking about the module and the previous module, and I just embed it right here in this page. It's not something I do when we're face-to-face, but now that we're online, I've been doing that. I've been using Loom, which I think Chris sent out a couple months ago, which has been really pretty easy to use.
Yeah, if you want more info on using Loom, just go to our PD course that I showed you that's in the help menu, and then click on Core Tools, the tile that says Core Tools, and there's one there for screencasting. And then also, Aaron Tyson did a great PD on how to do Loom recording, and you can find that in our recorded PD section of that course.
All right, and so this one, the next step is just that they're required to do is I want them to look at some of these, excuse me, tips and techniques that they're going to be using for the assignments. You notice this is a Google slideshow, so I'm not against embedding Google slideshow, but this is more of an information rather than a date-based one. And one other thing, not that you need to know all these tips or want to know all these tips right now, but one thing I've discovered over the last few years is I started this as a Google Doc. So it's just, they were scrolling down to get all the information. What I've learned is that if I chunk up the information or split it up, one idea per slide, they're more likely to read it because it's just a few words. It's like they're reading it before they even realize they're reading it, and then they're done. And then they actually, for whatever reason, they seem to like to click. As soon as it's scrolling, it's like they just mindlessly scroll and aren't actually reading it. So I've had better luck with students engaging the material when I split it up into specific slides rather than one long, document that way. So they go through those. As you see down here with the button for next, it allows them to go on to the next assignment. You see here, this is something I did a few years ago with Canvas design tools. It's not something I would recommend you jumping into unless you really want to dig deep. It can be quite frustrating at times, but now that I've got it set up, I can just copy and paste, which is nice, but it took a long time. So again, keeping it consistent, you see just a quick little overview. I always have a consume section where maybe it's a video, an article, something like that they need to learn, watch, interact with, and then create, reflect. So it's always consume, create, reflect, and I keep that consistency in every assignment that they do. And again, this is a discussion, but it's still, an assignment, right? It's the discussion format with directions here, and then to hopefully look at that, and then they just respond into the discussion right there. And I won't go through each and every one, but again, you'll see the consistency here of consume, create, reflect, and breaking it up so I'm not putting 4 or 5 things into one assignment. It's kind of like if you email somebody and ask them 5 or 6 questions, you're more likely than not going to have to send a follow-up email because they're only going to answer 3 of them, right? Unless you maybe number them or bullet point them. So I try to break it up so that they're only really doing one main task per assignment. And you see as they go through here, again, kind of the same consistency, so they kind of catch on to that pattern of what we're doing along the way, and then this would be the end one that they would submit. All right, so I'm going to come back here just to show you real quickly. And I know for time's sake, I'm not going to go over all of them, but of how to do it. But on the slides, there are 3 buttons that show you basically how to do this exact thing. So remember, if you already have content in Canvas, you just want to add it to modules, you would just make a module up here and then click this plus, and then you can search all of your assignments, quizzes, discussions, whatever you want, and you just add it directly in there. So you're not creating from scratch, you're just organizing it in here.
And a quick tip on that, you could add a bunch of stuff in at once if you hold down, if you're on a PC, you hold down Control or you do a shift click, and it doesn't take that much time at all.
And then the last thing I'm going to show you about modules, if you come over here to these 3 little dots and hit edit, this is where you can set up those rules I was talking about. So you just kind of add a requirement. It's basically just one of your module items. And then you set what do you want the student to have to do before they get their beautiful little green check mark. You can set it up to be a score. So maybe they have to keep resubmitting it until they get at least a 90% or something like that. It's up to you. I keep it pretty simple that I want them to view it and submit. And then in my class, typical when we're face-to-face, they're getting feedback along the way. And then this little check mark, I use it sometimes, other times I don't. It just depends on the module, but basically that forces them that they have to do this item before they can access this one. They have to do this one before they can access that. So depending on your module, what you've got set up, sometimes that's really cool. But sometimes it's more of a hassle because then they can't actually see one of the later assignments that would be nice for them to see even before they do some of the stuff before. So I go back and forth on that. It depends on your setup. But I think that's basically the general idea of modules. I know that's not teaching you everything you need to know. That's kind of what the second part of this would be if you have more questions on it. But that's the general understanding. I think I got everything there. Yes. I'll stop presenting now for you, Chris.
Okay. One more thing on modules that makes it really nice for teachers is in the Canvas Gradebook, there's filters. You can filter by assignment group. And if you're using modules, you can also filter by module. And I find that it's a lot easier to manage and work with your gradebook if it's not so big. And so that filter just shows you like, oh, I want to work on my evolution module because that's what we're doing right now. And that's where I'm entering grades. And you can just turn that filter on really quick in your gradebook. And it makes it a lot easier to use the Canvas Gradebook and involves a lot less scrolling for you. The other thing, and another thing that I always appreciate when I'm looking at a teacher's page and I'm looking at their modules is teachers who are really student-centered, focused. You got to remember the students are using our course more than we do, like as a collective, right? So your most recent module, I think, should be on top instead of sequential. I know it sounds a little backwards, but in reality, like when they use it, where are they going to go? They're going to go to the most recent module, hopefully. I know there'll be some students that are behind and things like that, but we want to, I think, put the most recent module on top, and all you have to do is basically drag it to the top and it'll stay on the top. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Can you see my screen? Okay. Yeah.
Yep.
So you should be seeing assignments and due dates. And this is pretty simple, but the simplicity of it and the way Canvas is designed, I mean, Canvas was designed with a ton of these design principles. And I mean, they did focus groups. There's people who do this for a living. And it's designed so that you can't break it no matter what you do. It constrains us, and we may not like those constraints, but there's good reason for all those constraints. But one of the things you can do that breaks a lot of the built-in design of Canvas is not put a due date in an assignment. If something is due, meaning that you want students to complete it and it's going to be in your gradebook and you're going to give them a score or feedback for it, it really needs to have a due date. And the reason why is because students work off those due dates because Canvas is designed around due dates. In Canvas, there's potentially 7 different places where those due dates show up automatically, all just from you putting in one little due date. They'll see it in their global to-do list. They'll see it in their course to-do list. They'll see it in their dashboard list view. They'll see it in their calendar. If they're using the apps, the Canvas student app, they can get push notifications in the app from those due dates. They can also get email notifications, text notifications, and if they want to go further, they can even import their Canvas calendar feed into Google Calendar or iCal if they want. So that's a lot. So we want to make sure we have our due dates in Canvas, and that we're using them appropriately. I would say most of the time the available from and until date should be blank, unless you really have a specific reason why you want a date in there. Those you do not need to fill in at all, but it is really important to fill in the due date. I'm going to go to an actual student's dashboard to see what kind of effect this has as a student view. So this is an actual student. You can see over here. Can everybody see this, by the way?
Yeah.
You can see over here in the to-do list. This is like the first thing that students would see when they come to Canvas. They see this student is enrolled in 5 courses. And then over here on the to-do list, that's what's coming up. And these are from due dates or calendar dates or discussion dates or announcement dates. That's what's coming up in all the different courses. And you can see this one's from AP English, this one's from Pre-Calc Honors, this one's from AP, and so on. So that's all the courses. But if they clicked on, let's say, a particular course, then that to-do list changes. And now it's just for that course. So over here on the right, you see that, okay, this is just things coming from that course. And the to-do list will show up to 7 things on that list by default, the next 7 things that are coming up. But what I think Canvas has been working on, and some of our students have discovered, but I don't think a lot of our teachers know about this, is there's 3 dots up here. If you don't like that color overlay, you can get rid of it there. That's kind of fun. But the other thing that I think is definitely more useful for students is this list view. When you change it to list view like this, you get a totally different kind of user experience. You can see that you can go back in time here and see what was going on yesterday. You can see here's Friday, for instance. Here's some things. Now, if I completed that by default, like anything that I would turn in as a student would be marked completed. But if this is a calendar reminder, so I already got that, so I can check it off. And then when I refresh the page, it'll say completed. I can check that off. And what if I wanted to add something else that I need to do? There's a little plus here. And so I can give it a title. I can put a date on it. I can put the time and then put details on it. Even if I wanted to, I could even say that, oh, this is for my AP Physics course, and put a little reminder to myself to do something. There's also like latest, grade stuff here, and then alerts. Uh-oh, I'm missing US History B. I'm missing AP Physics 1B. So I can take, the teacher said I'm okay on that. I can exit out and I can take control of that. And then you can also see if you X out something, you can see, oh, what did I X out? Was that correct? So there's a beautiful user experience here for students if they use the list view. And then it's one click away just to get to something. So if I needed to go see what this was right now, I can click on that. That would take me right there. If I click on the name of the course, it takes me to the course. So in the slide show that I put right here, there's a button right here that'll take you to more info on list view. And then the other thing I wanted to point out about due date is by default, Canvas just makes it due at the very last minute of the day, which is 11:59 p.m. I don't know that that's when we want our students turning in something, because if you give them that long, I think anybody, whether you're a student or not, sometimes you'll wait till the last minute because life is busy and other things take priority sometimes. So if we want to help our students sleep a little bit better, maybe 9 p.m. or whatever due date time you think is appropriate, but I would encourage you to change it and then just keep it consistent for your course. And then again, one of the best things about using Canvas this year is Canvas next year, because when you import content into your Canvas course for next year, it'll ask you, do you want to adjust the due dates? And if you say yes, let's say you have an assignment that's due the 3rd Tuesday of the month, or 3rd Tuesday of the semester, and it was due at 8 p.m., it'll move it automatically to the 3rd Tuesday of the semester in 2021. And it'll still be 8 p.m. So you don't have to change all your times.
Yeah, and if I could jump in just real quick, I think that's another one that's just probably the biggest piece of feedback I get from students when I do that Canvas critique is having due dates. Anything the kids are turning in that has a due date really should be in Canvas with a due date. So I know a lot of students have talked about, they have teachers use the announcements. They'll send out an announcement that something's due in a week, but then it never goes on their calendar. And it just makes it, again, that discoverability piece is a little trickier. So it's kind of that idea, use the right tool for the right job. You know, yeah, maybe a screwdriver could help you dig a hole, but a shovel's a much better choice. So if you're going to give an assignment, use the assignment tab or function rather than the announcement tab. And just for the available from and until, unless you have a very specific reason why you want to do it and or know another teacher that does it and you love how it's working for them, I would avoid it. Sometimes just more of a headache if kids are, especially when we're going to online and we have to be more flexible with the due dates and things like that, it's probably going to cause more work for you than what it's worth. I think I maybe have used it a couple times and I don't think I'll ever use it again. Just doesn't work for what I do.
All right, I know we're past 10:45 now, so I think we're gonna kind of skip our next slide here, and then just kind of encourage you. There's a really good video it's thought-provoking about the design of doors of all things, and that brings us back to our homepage. And you know, what is our homepage for? It's to get you in without frustration, to hopefully inspire you, and that's what we really, hopefully, our whole Canvas course would be like. So that's a thought-provoking video that you can, I would encourage you to watch. It's like 5-10 minutes. It's very well done. And I just wanted to say thank you. And then also, you have the slides, but if you go back over to our help course right here, and you see right here, Fundamentals of Online Teaching, that's the PD that we're starting off this week. You'll see that each of these will start to be linked, and then they'll have some resources, the slides that we shared, the video of this session that we did if you want to go back and watch something. And then I know some people asked some questions like, what Canva template would you recommend? Some questions about the check marks. When I stop the recording, I'll get a transcript of all that, and I'll make an FAQ page in there that better answers all those questions with links to resources. So I'll just need about a day to do that. So tomorrow, check it. But right now, it's not going to go anywhere.
And we will be hosting, or Chris and Nick will be hosting kind of a Q&A session in about 5 minutes or so at 11 o'clock. For anybody that has specific questions that wants to come back on or needs some help, please do that using the same link. It's been great seeing everyone, you know, help each other out and answer some of these questions. I think to get us through this and to move forward, that's what we need. We have some great people, the TRTs and some experts that have been working with Canvas for a long time, but seeing all of you help each other out is really the most effective way as we collaborate through this process and the challenges that we're facing right now. But thanks again to Chris and to Nick. Really appreciate it, fellas. And anybody that wants to come back on for some specific help or specific questions at 11 o'clock, please do so using the same meeting link. All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks.